All right, welcome back, everybody. Next, I'm pleased to introduce someone who has dedicated her career to promoting the well-being of millions of people and to creating a more resourceful world. She is a senior vice president of one of Itron's largest organizations, Network Solutions. The company is responsible for global network platforms and for creating partnerships for smarter city utilities. Itron launched an interactive STEM curriculum called Resourcefulness, which was recognized by the White House as a forthcoming global educational tool. Ms. Moore will share with you her experiences and expertise within innovation, education, and STEM space. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Sherilyn Moore.
Thank you very much. I got a little worried that he wasn't talking about me when he said I've dedicated my life to helping others, but it sure sounded amazing. Doesn't always feel like that on a day-to-day basis, but thank you very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I've never been up in front of a group such as yourselves here at Air Force Base talking about leadership. So it's been really interesting to think about what you'd want to hear. So I look forward to sharing a bit of insight about what leadership has meant to me, what I've done to try to be a good leader, and how you innovate within a completely different environment than what we just heard about from Jordan. I don't know if Jordan's still in the room, but I found that fascinating because I'll be your polar opposite. I'll talk a little bit about what it's like being in a large company and how we lead and how we evolve and how we innovate. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. I took a pretty unlikely path to get to a STEM career, if you will. My parents were Depression-era babies that were born and raised their families, and then in the early 70s became divorced. Their kids were long gone. They found each other, and they decided to have one more, and it was me. So in 1973, I had parents that were nearing 50 years old, and I went on to have a wonderful life with my mom and dad, but it was interesting because I was raised an only child by very older parents at the time. So one of my favorite stories to say, which I think shaped me a little bit and definitely created a little bit of ingenuity and innovation early, was that I was diagnosed as almost legally blind when I was in kindergarten. I couldn't see a darn thing. So they put glasses on me, and I lost a pair, and then I lost another pair. My mom and dad said, you know what? If she really needed them, she wouldn't lose them. So that's okay. So that was the end of the glasses. So all the way through middle school, I get there, and I have found a way to try to stay in the front of the classroom and to kind of ask people what things say. I couldn't thread the sewing machine in home ec in 7th grade, so I would hey, would you mind threading the needle on the sewing machine? And then I'd hurry up and try to sew as much as I could. I couldn't see anything, and I learned to figure out, just work around it. And then right before high school, went back in and an eye doctor, my mom and dad, I don't know what, finally, I go into an eye doctor at this point, and the eye doctor says, are you kidding me? She's been walking around like this her whole upbringing. So anyways, I wear contacts now, so it's okay. I can kind of see what I'm doing now. But anyway, great upbringing for that reason. Kind of had its little quirks, right, with parents that thought about things a little differently, and a major generational gap. But one of the things that I think it taught me really at a young life, one of the advantages I think I had, particularly as we'll fast forward in a bit and talk about my career as a woman in tech and a woman in STEM, is I really had a lot of confidence. I didn't have brothers or sisters reminding me that I wasn't that cool. They thought I was wonderful. They thought I walked on water. They had the time to dote on me. And I remember at some point, I'm still blind, but at some point my mom and dad had me so convinced. I remember looking around about 6th grade going, I don't think I am the smartest, the prettiest, or the funniest by a long shot. But my parents had almost convinced me that I was until for a certain point of age. So I had this innate sense of confidence really established from my parents. And I think that shaped me a little bit. So now going on a little bit, beyond my young era, I found myself coming into a career at Itron in 2001. I had spent 5 years between two companies, Micron down in Boise and Avista Utilities. I was getting my MBA at Gonzaga, and I met somebody that said, hey, there's this company, Itron, and we need a senior product manager, and I think you'd be perfect. And I thought, wow, what's this Itron thing? They're a tech company for utilities, and my background was I'd worked for a tech company, and I was currently at the utility. So I applied, and long story short, I end up at Itron. Since that time, the company that I started with, they'd just gone through an era where they almost, had gone out of business. They'd gone through their own eras of ebbs and flows. The company was actually established about not long after I was born in the later 70s. It had grown and then kind of shrunk. So in 2001, it was maybe a $300 million company starting to kind of build itself back up. Fast forward to today, 17 and a half years later, we're $2.5 billion, and we're global, spread all over the world with facilities in South America and Asia, in Europe, Australia, and certainly large presence here in North America. So within Itron, I ended up having 5 sub-careers. So when I really look at what's gone on in the last 17 years, it's really been kind of a staging of 5 different careers. And my experience had been, you can really, keep evolving and innovating and adapting within the place that you are. So in the times where I would just start to think, I feel like I've mastered this, I'm starting to feel a little restless. The company was large enough and things in the industry were dynamic enough that I could, the next thing would happen. And I would put myself into positions where I would do completely new things. I had been a product person, I'd been in tech, and about 7 years ago, they asked me to run global marketing for the company, working for the CEO. I really hadn't ever done public relations. I hadn't done branding. I hadn't done real, field marketing, because again, I'd been this product person. I'd defined products, I'd defined strategy, I represented it with customers, I would, work with R&D to build new products. So I said, okay, global marketing. I immersed myself in it. So it was a stage of my career where, I was, already midway through my 30s. I thought I was a defined product person, and I said, let me go just learn this. And I didn't just take it on and think that I already knew. It's like I recognized you have to learn the discipline. Public relations is its own discipline. So I started at least getting into the PRSA, Public Relations Society of America, or I'd work with consultants to really dig deep and learn. But I also recognized you had to hire good people and learn from people. So I had always this desire of, if I don't know, as Jordan said, stay humble. If you don't know, learn and be willing to keep learning as you go. And that was one of the disciplines that were really important to me. So I took that role on, and then at some point I've come back, and now I run our largest business unit for the company, which is incredibly exciting. So within Itron, it's been great, and one of the things that I would encourage is, when we look at leadership, and maybe someday you end up looking at larger companies, there's great opportunity to just get in and keep redefining yourself. You're not stuck in any path or in any track, and it's very stimulating to keep saying, I'm not locked into one category, and I can go on and learn something new, try something new, and spend the time and put your money where your mouth is and put your time into something to learn something new. So it's been a fun journey at Itron. I've seen a lot of change. I've gone through 4 CEOs of the company. I don't know, I've lost track of how many people I've worked with and have learned from. In many cases, I've had some really terrible bosses along the way. At least I've got 1 or 2 in mind. And there was moments where I thought, oh my gosh, they don't know what they're doing, or they're extraordinarily difficult, or they're not necessarily fair. But you know what I did is I would study it, and I would lay in bed and I'd say, what is this person doing wrong, or how could this have been done better? And I've almost made it a personal, very personal in my own mind pastime of studying what works and what doesn't work. And I've really tried to figure out, like, well, when I get to be at that level, whatever that level was at the very stage of my career, I'm not going to do that. Well, at the same time, when I'd work with somebody that was really good at something, I'd make these notes like, that really works. That really works. That I really admire that they do this well. And I would ask questions, and I'd think, I'm going to do that. And you just keep building out, like your own belief system of what leadership really means or how to do that well. So taking that quest of, constant learning, and trying to prove yourself, but also being very, which some people I've seen don't do this, but being very wise to what's going on around you and observant and noticing, here's what's working for this person and here's what's not. And you can really take it and apply it to yourself. So over the course of my career, I've developed a few things that I've seen that have really worked for me and have become actually critical to what I do. So they're really important to me. They're my beliefs. But I've also seen that these are directly correlated to other really successful people. This is what they do as well. And one is the more senior you go, and I know you know this in the military more than anywhere else, but the critical, your ability to build a team and to be able to rely on, count on, and trust. And that's something that someday if you do go out to the military, you naturally bring, is that belief that the team is incredibly important. But you won't believe how many people get caught up in their own ego and they're afraid to maybe hire people that could be better than them. Or maybe they don't want, to have the team take on and delegate as much because they want to be able to be the one to have more of the visible recognition or authority or projects. Or maybe they're so caught up in just what it takes to do their job that they just take it for granted that you have to actually nurture and build a team, provide the platform that they work together and solve problems. Just being organized underneath someone or in one division in a company doesn't create a team. So it's like a marriage, right? Takes a lot of work. We all know that. We've heard that. But the same holds true for when you're assigned a manager or when you're assigned a director or when you're assigned to be a VP or you're assigned to be a senior VP or general manager. You can't just assume that team naturally happens. So the higher you go in leadership, the more time you have to spend on doing some of these softer things, which is building a team. I have a lot of people have to do a lot of hard work, and I still do a lot of hard work, but increasingly I have found that I have to spend more and more time worrying about team dynamics. The other thing that gets in your way is if you have one, kind of tension area, maybe it's a weak performer, maybe it's somebody that's a little toxic, maybe it's somebody that just comes and complains all the time or sloughs off their work. One person like this, by the way, my husband's a teacher, school teacher, and he's got a saying for what this is. So when you have one person like this, it can really damage the whole team. It creates this negative vibe, and your team's going to complain amongst themselves, and it ends up creating a vibe. And I've got this great intuition where I can feel that a mile away, and I make sure I nip it in the bud because that really brings down the sense of the team. And my husband is a teacher. I guess you don't get to nip it in the bud, meaning get rid of kids out of your classroom, but what he calls it is it's the poop in the ice cream. You've got a whole gallon of ice cream, and all it takes is one speck of poop. And all the ice cream is terrible. So building a strong team really implies that you have to be, have the intuition. You got to have a good feel of what's going on. I don't know how many leaders, they kind of, maybe it's subconscious, but they kind of put the blinders on about the negative things going on or the tough problems because, it's something you have to deal with. You've got to address it. And that's critical to building the strong team. So putting the mechanisms in place where you bring the team together, where you give problems for them to solve, you give an opportunity where you bring people together. Believe it or not, bringing people together and putting meetings together, you can forego it in a company. You can just not call meetings, or you can call a staff call and just you give a one-way update. That doesn't create a sense of team for everyone that's just calling in. So putting those mechanisms in place to create the team, but also being willing to kind of figure out your hot buttons and solve them. If it could be personalities, tensions. Don't be afraid to solve them. So building a strong team, incredibly important. I rely on my team to do so much, and so it's my job to make sure that they're set up for success. So the other piece that I found is really important is I learned early on in my career, and this shaped me. He was a senior executive, and I was new to Itron, and he said, Sherilyn, he's like, just make a goddamn decision. There was something that he's like, you know what, so much waste happens when you just don't make the decision because you're trying to get to the right answer. Sometimes, in many cases, you're more efficient by making the call. And if it was maybe not the best decision or optimal decision, calibrate. But that paralysis of not making a decision or making the call or the declaration wastes time and creates inefficiency. So the other thing I'm willing to do is there's a moment in time, and you can see the churn and people have different views. There's a moment of time, and this takes a little bit of art as much as it does science, but you just have to be willing to sign up and own it and make the call, make the decision. And that's, again, a judgment call on your own part. Do we have enough information to make the right decision? And/or is it better to make the decision right now with the information we have versus spending more time, trying to get to more information to make the right decision? So that's something that I keep in mind, is be willing to make the call and drive efficiency. And people, sometimes, even if they're not sure, they just want to, as long as the call is played, right? Somebody's called the play on the field, let's just go play ball, right? Most people in your organization would rather just go play ball than sit around participating in what or not we should do. And then the third piece that is really important is to find your passion. You can look at this holistically as like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or go into corporate business or tech, that such as what I did? But I don't think it's as much those kind of decisions. Once we're in, a place where we're in a job or we're in the military or we're in a company, you can find a way to make the job you want it to be. You can find the ways to say, I really enjoy, working on these kinds of projects. You find the extra projects that you really enjoy. And that's one of the things that I've done to find joy in my career. If things have different stages of what I'm doing have started to feel more maybe monotonous, or maybe more okay, we've solved all these problems, the process is in place, the team's working. Someone like me kind of goes, okay, I've got to find some way to add value that really does fulfill my passion. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that within the boundaries of working for a large company or to be part of any company. You can still find a way to say, hey, I'm really good at volunteering in the community in this way. I'm going to make this a project that Itron gets involved in the community. And it's good for Itron, it's very good for the company, but it's also something I'm passionate about. So if you're going to work for so long, particularly in my situation, in one place for so long, finding those areas that just make you tick, it's on you. You don't sit around and wait for somebody to instill passion in your job because you're waiting for the job to change. You make it change, right? You have so much in most jobs and most companies, whether you're in, Stay Alfred, they're going to need everybody to take on different roles because they're a smaller startup company. Or if you're an Itron, even if you're an engineer and 6 hours of the day they want you writing code on a certain product because you're established to a team, there's still gray area where they're saying, who wants to volunteer for this? Who wants to work on this special project? Or even better, for you to say, hey, I've got a couple free hours. I'd really like to get involved and go help marketing do this. There's always that open space, but not everybody takes those opportunities or takes initiative to make their job what they want it to be, to make it a career and to instill their passion. And when you can do that and find those things that you really love to do, it just makes work a lot more fun. So those are a few things. I've also seen that the gray area I've had, or the space that I've had within Itron to make it something, I became really passionate about resourcefulness. So our company actually has a purpose. So Itron, when I first started, we were the world leader in helping automate the meter reading process so that a utility could go and not get bit by a dog, but actually walk by the fence and actually read the meter without actually going behind the fence where they'd get bit by the dog. That was the kind of the key, one of the key things that our technology for 20 years, kind of revolutionized utilities and being able to read their meters. So in itself, How much does that save the world, and how much, what kind of purpose is it there? But I've had the, great pleasure of working with some other really amazing leaders at our company, and we've evolved our mission and we've evolved that technology such that we're actually helping, prevent outages so you get your power back on sooner. We're sensing if gas is maybe starting to run so we can shut that gas off before kaboom and there's major explosions and homes and God forbid lives are being threatened. And water, we're saving water. Did you know that of all the water that's pumped and treated, we lose 30% of it before it's delivered, to your home or to your business, and just leaking infrastructure? So finding and stopping where water is being leaked. We've evolved the technology of what we can do to continually solve more and more real problems. And in so doing, it's afforded us the opportunity to say, as a company, we believe in the resourceful, in a more resourceful world, and that the way the world manages energy and water will shape how we live our lives. And so being able to even, when I said make something your passion, we've been even able to shape this company that's now, a $2.5 billion company to solving these real world problems. And that goodness starts becoming more goodness, right? That multiplier effect. That success has allowed us then to start saying, hey, how do we encourage more students in STEM education to want to get involved in the technology to better manage energy and water? So we invest some of our profits in developing curriculum to entice students. So it's a free high school curriculum to get involved. And it's branded Itron, so they know who we are. Maybe they want to come work for us, but more importantly, maybe they want, they go through this curriculum in high school and they say, well, I want a job in STEM, in energy and water. I wouldn't have thought of that otherwise. So a lot of great things happen. I think when you work for a company that's purpose-built, when you lead from within and find ways to innovate, there's always that room to keep pushing and driving, and at the same time build amazing teams such that you can be successful and effective, and then a lot of these opportunities and these doors open up. So with that, that's really what I had. The little girl that couldn't see has become the 45-year-old that's now putting readers on top of my contacts because my eyesight's even getting worse. So with that, thank you very much for having me. It was fun talking with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Moore. So, as airmen, we strive daily to generate efficiencies and find ways to improve combat capabilities across the Air Force. Our next guest is one of these leading individuals. He has been involved in the innovation space for some time. A true passion of his. He's leading efforts on new training devices that incorporate VR and AR and hopes it will bump training into the 21st century. Major Watson is well educated and certified in support of his field and has spoken about the need for a culture of innovation across the Air Force. Today, he'll share with you his experience about creating a culture of innovation and break down what innovation means to airmen and how we can all become innovators. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Major Mark Watson.
Yeah, Blackhawks forever. That's right. How's Fairchild doing today? Yeah, it's Friday. That's something. Well, we have gotten to hear a great number of speakers today. They've given really great insights about how to innovate well, how to lead from the front, and ways and processes with which to innovate. And I wanted to tell you my story today. 2.5 years ago, my Lean Six Sigma mentor and I were issued a challenge. Create a culture of innovation, they said. While intrigued, we had lots of questions ourselves. First was, why do we need to do this? What do you exactly want that to look like? What does that need to produce? And can I please hear that used in a sentence? While we knew it was possible, we certainly knew that we had some work to do. My name is Mark Watson, and I am a KC-135 instructor pilot. And my job is to teach KC-135 aircrew how to fly and operate this beautiful stratotanker, whose job it is to transfer jet fuel from our jet to coalition U.S. aircraft. And our community as we transfer jet fuel, jokes that we pass gas for a living while wearing onesie pajamas. And that's not too far from the truth. But why would you ask a pilot to transform culture? I thought the same thing when they asked me. Well, I'd been doing continuous process improvement with the Air Force for about 8 years. I'd gotten a degree and a certification in entrepreneurship, and I'd been a self-proclaimed entrepreneur for years. That's kind of an entrepreneur who works inside the network, kind of lays low to get things happen. And so I was asked to help create this culture of innovation at Altus Air Force Base. Altus Air Force Base is a base of about 3,000 people whose role is to teach KC-135 and C-17 students how to fly and operate the aircraft. Here's a picture of a 97th Air Mobility Wing tanker passing gas to an F-22. So here's a little bit of context behind the challenge that I got back in 2016. The Air Force pilot shortage was in full bloom. We had been in a resource-constrained environment for nearly, well, for a decade or more. Did you know that back in 2016 that the Air Force was the smallest that it had ever been since it was developed and created in the late 40s, but with more mission than we've ever done? Raise your hand if you were serving in 2016. So you felt it, didn't you? Resource-constrained environment. Our national defense strategy was shifting from counterterrorism to defending against near-peer threats. No wonder they were crying out for innovation. As an Air Force, we were needing to do more with less, often referred to as frugal innovation. And lastly, our Air Force and certainly our base had this real bad case of innovation illiteracy. In fact, at the time, there wasn't a single class in the whole Air Force that taught innovation as a term, a process, or a system across the whole Air Force, which I thought was surprising. And if you're like me, that is kind of surprising, right? I mean, isn't the Air Force one of the most innovative organizations? Didn't we create the stealthiest, most robust aircraft to ever haunt the skies and create this entire fleet of hellfire-launching drones to go drive the terrorists into hiding? Well, yeah, we had help. Typically, we outsource our innovations, those big tech innovations, to companies like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Convair, very innovative organizations that remain the benchmark today. There's a difference between an organization that outsources its innovation and one that's defined by a culture of innovation. And we had to create the latter. So we got to work. We wrote a lot of books and journals. We reached out to Air University, sister services, sister bases, academia, industry. And here's what we ended up doing. First, we defined what innovation was to us. The Army defines innovation as the conversion of new ideas into valued outcomes. The Navy defined innovation as what combines ideas, insights, and resources in new ways to benefit naval services. Kind of selfish, if you ask me. And we defined it, we took a page from the Innovation Engineering Institute's book and defined it as meaningfully unique change. It's meaningful because it's exactly what the airman needs, or the warfighter needs, exactly when they need it. It's unique in that our airmen are the only ones that have it. And it's change because it gets from their idea into their hands. But notice the action verb in each of these: conversion, combine, and change. Obviously, there's this metamorphic work that's being done to get it from someone's head into their hands. And that's really the process part of innovation. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. Second, after we had defined what innovation was, we wanted to define what the purpose of that innovation culture ought to be. We discovered that it wasn't necessarily that the Air Force needs us to create any technological innovations. It's more that they need us to be innovators, to think and create and deliver these warfighting solutions quicker than our enemies. So we made it our mission statement in our Wing Transformation and Innovation Office to forge innovative and agile airmen. We just need to be innovators. All right, so third, as we were asked to create this culture, we thought, man, we really need to figure out what our culture is right now. We need to measure our culture of innovation. So how do you measure culture? Well, there's a lot of books, turns out, on that. I reached out to my recent alum, Oklahoma State University Spear School of Business. Are there any OSU Cowboys out there? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, so what they did is they pointed us to something called the employee involvement model that says that if the organization's employees have the proper power, information, rewards, and knowledge, then they'll be excited and engaged in the vision that you want to achieve. All right, so that's kind of what we needed. So what we did was we measured each one of those. You can see power, information, rewards, and knowledge. And we asked airmen how they felt that Altus Air Force Base supported each of these. And their answers here are shown in orange. You can see, for example, power. They felt, if the line number 5 meant that you agree that Altus supported power, gave you the power that you needed to innovate, then you would write a 5. And then 2 is disagree. So then this is a Likert scale. You can see here the stifle zone is anything below 3.5. That means that they're really stifled in that area. So here's the results. We asked the base minus leadership. Oftentimes leadership tends to think better of the organization perhaps than maybe it actually is. So this does not account for leaders. All right, but you can see that over here in knowledge, that's where airmen felt stifled. But that's not too surprising, right? If there was no Air Force-driven or e-learning on innovation that everyone takes, then how is anyone going to learn how to be innovative? So it was clear that we would need to begin teaching airmen how to innovate. Okay, and then fourth, we wanted to create this get well plan. We wanted to close those gaps between that line 5 of airmen agree that they have this and where they actually feel that they are. So we wanted to close the gaps. So what we did to close the gaps was we committed to Cotter's 8 Steps of Change model. This is a tried and true model. It's been tried over thousands of organizations, hundreds of companies, and it's a very well-researched model. How we did this is really a talk for another day, but I'll tell you that the 2 places that we struggled with the most is communicating the vision, because Captain Watson at the time and Mr. Jeff Lee at the time did not have it in us to be able to go and tell every unit about what innovation was and what this culture was supposed to be. We relied on leadership to do that. And then the second struggle was generating short-term wins. Kind of the riddle to solve was we want airmen to innovate and to participate in this, but we're not going to make this mandatory. This is something that they should go do. So how do you generate short-term wins when there's nothing mandatory about it and participation's totally voluntary? Okay, so those are kind of the 4 steps of what we did. So how did we end up doing? Well, over the first 12 months, we taught the most improvement courses, instructed the most students, and yielded the most improvement events out of our command's 23 wings. Our base was also one of only 3 wings to earn a highly effective rating in the UEI for commitment to continuous improvement out of 23 bases inspected over a 2-year period. We were the runner-up in our command's culture change challenge. And then we're also able to go get funding and help set up Altus Air Force Base's Innovation Lab, a place that airmen can go to create and network and prototype ideas that they have in their workplaces and create their own solutions. All right, so Mark, that sounds really cool for what you did at Altus, but here I am at Fairchild, and I want to know what you have for me today at my workshop. The Air Force is saying you need to be an innovator. How do I do it? That's what I want to learn. Okay? I think that's a fair question. I know it was rhetorical, but I get to set myself up because I'm the speaker. All right, so let me learn real quick. Actually, let me go to this next slide. And I want to learn who my thinkers are in the crowd today. Let me see here. There it is. Okay, that's the Altus Innovation Lab, by the way, that we set up. That I forgot to click to. Okay, read this Lego slide here real quick. Does anyone relate? Okay, so this was my experience at Altus. And what I want to know in the crowd is, who are the people that are holding the wheel? Who are the ideators out there, the people with the good ideas that just wish someone would stop long enough their laborious process to help themselves? Raise your hand. Nobody. Cool. Well, ideators out there can be proud. It's okay. What if you, or maybe someone you know, maybe the guy next to you, is that person, or you know someone who is an innovator? Raise your hand. Okay, a few more. That's good? That's good. Okay, who are my frontline workers who are so busy executing the mission that they really don't have time to improve anything, much less lead a project? Yep. And then who are my frontline supervisors or formal leaders out there that are often managing multiple projects at once and trying to work late to help the airmen get their mission done? Yeah. Okay, so that's most of us in the room. But most of us aren't relating to the guy that is holding the wheel, right? Well, what if I told you that 98% of you in the room are idea people and are the guy holding the wheel? Geniuses, even, of the creative sort. Dr. Land is a PhD scientist who helped NASA develop this survey to figure out who the best people would be to develop NASA rockets. My slide will come up here in a second. There he is, Dr. Land. Looks awesome, right? All right, this guy tested his survey on 1,600 children, starting at age 5, and then resurveyed them all the way until they were an adult. His survey showed that 98% of kids aged 5 show genius levels of creativity when problem solving. But by the time that they grow up to be my age, about 21, they are only down to a measly 2%. How about that? Okay, so then the logic goes that by nature, 392 out of the 400 of us in the room or so are the wheel holders. They're the creatives, the idea people. Well, if the vast majority of us are actually the wheel holder, then why do most of us identify with the square wheelers? I think it's similar to my experience at Altus Air Force Base. I think it's because as airmen, we don't fully understand the term innovation and what the Air Force really wants from us, and we certainly don't understand the process which to use it. And so what I want to do is I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about that process. Okay, so what I want to do is here we go. NASA, that was the NASA poll. And this is when we learned that we were all idea people. Are you ready for it? Wait. For it. It'll work. Wait for it. Yeah, we're idea people. Very exciting. Okay, all right, so who can innovate? You, me, our enemy. That means that we have to be better than our enemy at this, right? Okay, so the word I read most commonly when reading military literature about innovation is speed. Speeding up our OODA loop, speeding up the time that it takes to get from idea to solution. Okay, so we have to be better at this, and any of us can innovate. There it is. We have to be greater. See the greater than the enemy? Okay, and then when can you innovate? Well, this is kind of the easy part. You can do this anytime. You can do it on the back of a napkin. You can go to your unit's whiteboard in the commander's conference room and start drawing out your ideas. But what I want to kind of cue you in on is 4 cues of when innovation should come to your mind. When you need something to save you time, when you need something to save you pain, when you need something to make your force more lethal, and when you need to make your force more ready. These 4 cues should trigger the word innovation in your mind. Okay, so then what is innovation? Remember what I defined it as? Anyone remember? Just shout it out. Meaningfully unique change. I kind of heard the rumbling. That'll work. That'll work for now. Okay, so there's innovation, the process, as in I have this problem, I'm going to solve it with innovation. Then there's innovation, the product, as in this innovation saved me so much time. And then there's lastly, but most often forgot as the most valuable part or product of innovation is the innovator. For what do you call someone who builds but a builder, someone who maintains but a maintainer, someone who defends but a defender, someone who innovates but an innovator? I believe the Air Force is calling all of us to find our inner creative geniuses and be innovators. What if we did? What if we were all fueled by innovation, just like our Air Force vision statement says we are? How amazing would that be? Okay, and then where can you innovate? Did you know that at Fairchild Air Force Base, at the Red Morgan Center, they're creating, and really have almost created completely, something called the Inland Spark Thinker Space, which is a place that airmen are going to be able to go 24 hours a day with CAC access to meet, to network, to map out their ideas. It's going to be a really neat space. But also you can certainly do it in the comfort of your own unit. Okay, and then lastly, how do you innovate? Okay, the innovation process has 3 steps. Create, communicate, and deliver. Okay, in create, we're fully understanding the problem and then discovering the most meaningfully unique ideas with which to solve them. In communication, we're revealing the value behind the idea to the people who can make that idea a reality. This is often the most overlooked or underappreciated of the 3, but it's certainly very valuable to learn how to pitch ideas, ones that have numbers behind them, ones that are quantified, are 52% more likely to succeed. So it's worth doing, worth having this communication. And then lastly, delivery. This is where the idea gets from your head to your hands, where the rubber meets the runway. Here you are with your awesome idea that's been funded with someone else's money, and you need to deliver on your promise. Okay? So what you do is you use something called a learning cycle. It's also called the scientific method, the Deming cycle, the plan, do, study, act cycle. It's called a lot of things, but the secret here is speed. To fit the most cycles in a given amount of time so that you can fail fast and fail cheap. What's the last line of our Airman's Creed? I will not fail. And here you are, Major Watson, saying fail fast, fail cheap. The commanders in the room have assumed the risk of innovation failure. And so take comfort, know that that's something that your commanders have already bought into, and learn how to fail fast and fail cheap. All right. That's something that can be taught as well, that plan, do, study, act cycle. I don't have time to get into it right now, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about some funding avenues that you and your unit can get into in order to make your innovation a reality. All right, first, your unit could use Commander's Innovation Funds. These are funds, from the Air Force delegated all the way down to your unit that you can get access to simply by starting to pitch those ideas to your chain of command. You can talk to your resource advisor. They can use their government purchase card. And if it's going to cost more than $5,000, then your resource advisor has a great network at the contracting squadron and at finance with which to start competing for acquiring that product or service. And lastly, I wanted to give everyone kind of 4 ways to hook you up with resources here at Fairchild to get more involved. Okay, first is the Greenbelt course. As everyone knows, there's a 1-week class that teaches you how to see and eliminate waste in your processes to save you lots of time and pain. It's true. Reach out to your FSS's manpower shop and they can get you on the schedule. Also, there's black belt and green belt trained airmen that are on the base that can come to your unit and help you facilitate problem solving, defining the problem, figuring out what the data shows, what the root cause is, and figuring out countermeasures and getting all the way down to making sure that you met your target. There's also squadron innovation funds. We talked about that. AFWorks, has anyone heard of AFWorks? AFWorks is a really neat entity that the Air Force has set up for us to be able to connect people with great ideas with the people in industry who are able to make those ideas a reality. You can Google AFWorks and get a number and an email address to make that happen. And then innovation workshops. I'm going to be offering innovation workshops monthly once the Inland Thinkerspace is up and running for anyone who wants to come and help get further definition on their problem, do creation sessions, and walk through this process with your idea to make your idea a reality. Okay, so my journey started out by trying to create this culture of innovation. I really realized that the Air Force doesn't necessarily need our innovation, it's that they need us to be innovators. There's a process to follow, a scientific process that minimizes risk by a factor of 10 if you follow it. Put another way, it increases your chance of success by a factor of 10. And I found out that your risk is something that's already been assumed by command. And so risk of failure is something you don't even need to worry about. Just follow the method, get hooked up with the right resources, and start innovating. Thank you very much, Fairchild. I appreciate your time.
Okay, Team Fairchild, looks like we've made it to the final speaker of today. Our final speaker this morning is Megan Holsey. She is the heart and soul of Startup Spokane. It's a Greater Spokane Incorporated program that provides entrepreneurship assistance, helping connect new business owners to important resources in our community. The program offers the chance to connect with mentors and professionals who will help navigate the challenges of owning and managing a growing business for free, as well as education on networking. Ms. Holsey will discuss tools, expertise, and experience available to airmen within the local community. Please put your hands together for Ms. Holsey.
Good morning. Thank you all for letting me be a part of this today. There we go. When Colonel Heafman asked me to talk to you guys today, I wasn't really sure exactly where my skill set overlaps with yours and what relevance I could bring to you. But after hearing all of the amazing lineup of speakers, it was really very clear where my expertise and what we do at Startup was going to fit in. Startup Spokane is the front door for entrepreneurship in the Inland Northwest. Our goal is to provide resources, guidance, and assistance to any kind of entrepreneur, regardless of whether you're a small business person or if you're actually inventing what might be the next Google. Our goal is to provide the resources and connect you with the ability to pursue your passion. And that's really been inspiring for me. And what I want to do is help you guys figure out what your roadmap might be. The one thing that connects all of you in this room is the fact that the Air Force is likely not the end of your career path. You will have something that happens after this. But what? Who knows, right? There are some steps that you can take that will help you plot out that course in somewhat a methodical fashion, but prepare you for whatever it is that comes next and prepare you for the changes you couldn't possibly anticipate. So the first thing I want each one of you to do is think about what it is that drives you. In Japan, they have a theory called ikigai, which is your reason for being. And that is where you find the intersection of certain ideas, your passion, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid to do. And once you find that, you never feel like you work a day in your life. And for me, I can tell you I've found mine, and that's empowering people to pursue their passions. And I want to see each one of you find out what your passion is and be able to pursue that. Now, let's say you really, really love baseball, okay? Since you're in this room, the odds are really good you're probably not in the running for a major league pitching contract somewhere, right? But you want to find something that maybe allows you to pursue that as a part of your career path. What you can do is find out what you are really good at. Maybe it's legal, maybe it's accounting, maybe it's marketing. And you can find out where that intersects with the thing that you really love and pursue that and make a living doing that and feel like you are doing something that contributes to something you love every single day. One of the other things that you can start doing right now, and these are things that you can be doing right now before you separate. You may have 3, 5, 10 years left before you separate from the military service. So these are things that you can be doing today to make yourself prepared for whatever comes next, even if you don't know what that is. But develop some really good habits, and all of you in the military are certainly developing those right now. But one of the things you need to do is be proactive. Evaluate your situation. If you see something that looks like it might be ready to fail, intercede now. Don't wait till it fails. Figure out what the potential problems are and try to problem solve before it becomes a problem. Be productive. Find ways to make the most out of every single moment of your day. Be consistent. Show up. Be relevant and engage. And find balance in your life. That's always going to be a challenge, and you're always going to be resetting what that balance looks like, but it's a really important thing to do. And finally, be a constant knowledge seeker. So, like Colonel Holt was telling you, or General Holt was telling you this morning, constantly seek knowledge, read, find out, what's new, what's innovating in the way we think about how we do business. Those are things that are going to help you drive your business forward no matter what career path you wind up taking. Now, one of the other things that each one of you can do today is acquire some basic business skills. As a part of the military, you have a ton of resources at your fingertips that are available to you at little or no charge. There are also a number of facilities that I'll talk about a little bit later that are available in this community, and if you move to another base, that I'm sure there's similar facilities and resources available to you no matter where you go. But make sure you're taking advantage of those. Acquire some basic fundamental skills. Learn how to develop a business plan, learn how to do some bookkeeping, some marketing, data management, customer service, building a social network that can help you make your business succeed. All of those are critical, and they're things that you can start doing right now. Adopt a growth mindset. When a challenge comes up, something that's blocking your road, instead of saying, well, gosh, we can't do that, it's just too hard, try to figure out how you're going to do it anyway. Are you going to climb the mountain, go around it, tunnel through it, burrow under it? There are always solutions as long as you are willing to keep trying and try to find new ways to approach the problem. And maybe instead of going over, around, or under it, you make it a part of your plan. Think differently, and that will allow you to look at the entire world in a way that gives you an advantage over everyone else. Once you're a little bit closer to leaving the service, like 12 months or less, there's some other steps that you can start taking. First of all, maybe you've identified what that passion point is and what your skill set is. Now, the only place I recommend not being an innovator is in finance and accounting. Don't do that. That doesn't work. But everywhere else, there's room to be an innovator. But do your homework. Figure out what the world needs, what your skills suit you to do, and figure out what the market is. So maybe you want to go out and start a video gaming thing with like VR and headsets and stuff. That's great, but know that you're competing against not only other people who are doing exactly that, but you're competing against traditional arcades or escape rooms or anything else that's new and innovative and draws people out of their home to engage in some kind of entertainment. How are you going to compete against that? And understand what the risks of entrepreneurship are for you. So if you're engaging in something that has a high initial investment, make sure that you understand what that looks like and what that looks like for you in your future if it doesn't succeed. Are you taking that risk yourself? Have you found a way to amortize that risk? Are you sharing that with business partners? And make a financial plan. Understand what you are going to need to undertake. So let's say your business plan entails that you aren't going to make a profit for the first 4 months. Double that. Make sure that you're planned for 8 or even 12 so that you have the resources to fall back on. And that could be anybody. You can find resources through maybe you separate from service at the time of retirement so you have some sort of steady income. That's a great place to be. That's a real advantage against most entrepreneurs. Maybe it's your spouse is going to be working so that you can rely on that income to kind of keep you afloat. But be creative, stay lean. Don't get excited the first time you get a big paycheck and go splurge on a new boat. Make sure that you're thinking about how this plays into the future and keeps your plan local. The other piece is know your local costs. If you're here in Spokane, but you're thinking about moving back home to Omaha, Nebraska to start your business, make sure you understand the local costs, the local tax structure, and the issues that are going to affect you there, because there are going to be some differences, and they do matter. And define your definition of success. Every one of us has a different vision of success. When I left the corporate environment and started my own consulting company, my definition of success wasn't income. There was a threshold of what I had to make, but my definition of success was time. I had kids in middle school. I wanted to have time to make sure I was at every dance recital, every play, every event that was meaningful to my kids. And that was my definition of success. And so for me, I had a very successful 6 years as an entrepreneur, independently running my own consulting business. But my definition of success might not be yours, but you need to know what yours is before you take that leap, so you'll know when you've achieved it. You can certainly reset that definition, and as you go through various phases of building your company and your organization, you should absolutely redefine that success. But make sure that you are constantly evaluating that and holding yourself accountable. And develop a support network, people who are going to be your cheerleaders, the people that you rely on. Those include the people who are in service with you right now, maybe some mentors in the field that do what you do already, advisors who are specialists in areas you're not an expert in, like maybe taxes, service providers like the SBA, the SBDC, organizations like that, your spouse. They are going to be a key part of your network. Friends, those are the people who can help promote your business and your ideas out on social media when you do launch. So build that network and make sure that you pull them in close. And be ready to make a sacrifice. It's a little ironic that I'm standing here telling you to be ready to sacrifice since you've all made so many sacrifices to be in the service already. But this is a different kind of sacrifice. You aren't sacrificing for your country. And by the way, thank you all for your service. But you are sacrificing for yourself. You're sacrificing a little bit of time now to make sure that you're building a business that has longevity and success that will follow you. You're going to spend time learning and acquiring knowledge constantly. And you may have to put off that new boat, that new car, while you're investing back in the business to build something that's going to be there for you forever. Once you've done those things, you're ready to make that jump. And once you do, tell your story. Get it out there. Make sure you're utilizing all of the elements of that network, that you're pulling people in, that you're getting them to share those stories on social media, that you are talking to people and getting them to be your advocates out in the community. And don't be afraid to ask for help. You built this amazing network of colleagues and mentors and advisors. Ask them for help. Bring them in. Help them be a part of the solution that you want to bring to the world. And most people don't mind. Once you've cultivated those networks, you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I don't really understand this new tax law. Can you help me with that? And if you've cultivated some of those relationships, there are people who are going to be willing to just dive right in and be by your side as you bring your ideas out. And never, ever, ever be afraid to change course. You will have corrections. Some will be minor, some will be fairly significant. But very few entrepreneurs start at point A and end at point B without a little bit of deviation in between. That's not only normal, it's actually healthy because the market is giving you feedback on your idea and telling you what you need to change. So, Jordan, those sheets weren't so good, so you needed new ones. That's a correction. These are little things that you can do to invest back in the success of your business long term. Take them seriously, and don't be afraid. It isn't an admission of failure. It's making you better and stronger. And you're also adapting to the market as it's being brought to you. And finally, enjoy the ride. You've worked really hard. You built something. Use this time to create the culture of the organization that you want to live, that you want to be the legacy. Celebrate the successes as they come to you, and find the community that wants what you have to offer and become a part of it. Engage. Be a part of a community that values you. Now, how do you do all that? This is actually the easy part. There's a lot of resources that are available to you right now, right here in this community. You can come to Startup Spokane. The services that we offer at Startup are absolutely free, and we will assist anyone with whatever your idea is or what kind of knowledge you need to acquire. We provide social events once a month where you can meet other innovators, investors, other people involved in the network. You can also take classes with us. We do lunch and learns twice a month. Again, those are free. And they're also available online. So if you can't get down and join us in person for a lunch and learn, you can get on our YouTube channel and check out any of those little tutorials right there, and we'll give you a ton of resources. We also, if you have an idea, if you're separating from service and you think you know what you want to do, we're more than happy to meet with you one-on-one and provide counseling and create a roadmap that's individual for you and that will help you determine what steps you need to take to be more likely to succeed as you move forward. Lynda.com is an online resource that has classes on everything under the sun. Accounting, finance, marketing, social media, you got it, all at lynda.com, and it's free. If you go down to the Spokane Public Library, you can get a library card, and they will get you onto that resource at no charge, and you can do that from the comfort of your own home. We also have a number of other amazing services available at the public libraries in Spokane, so if you want to do some market research, even if you are going to launch your business in some other city, we have all of the tools available to help you find out what you need to know before you do it. The Women's Business Center at SNAP is another amazing resource, and again, they have very low-cost classes. They can run you through a whole series of classes. The Small Business Development Center, SCORE, the SBA, those are all organizations that exist just to help people like you. And please don't be afraid to ask them. They will not only be able to help you, they'll also be able to give you referrals to others who can help you as you develop your business. And finally, we have 7 colleges in our community, and there are colleges, of course, across the country. And almost all of them have a business or an entrepreneurship major, and they're always looking for organizations or companies that they can help. They will assign their students as interns, and sometimes they even have programs that are designed to help develop those companies in the community. Don't be afraid to ask about those, get engaged, and take advantage of those services. Almost everything that I've talked about today is free. Free. So don't be afraid. Get out there, engage, and try. And anything that we can do to help you along the way, we are more than happy to be a resource for you as well. Thank you all again for your service, and thank you all for your time today. I hope to see all of you at some point walk through our door at Startup Spokane for a social event or one of our lunch and learns, or just for a meeting to come on and learn a little bit more about what we have to offer. Thank you so much, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Ms. Halsey. Hey, can we give one more round of applause for all of our guest speakers? They did a great job today. Okay, let's see, I'm on track here. Looks like we are on our final 10-minute break. Put your eyes together. Colonel Heathman has a few words he'd like to speak.
All right. All right, if we can just go to the next slide real quick. Major Watson talked about this just a little bit. We're trying to create, again, this culture, and this is the hardest part, and he talked about it. There's an old saying, eat the frog in the morning. Do the hardest thing right away and start maneuvering through the easier stuff later. This literally was, if you ask my wife, it was a napkin drawing. I had a cat on my lap and a beverage in my hand, and I was just drawing it. Some of you may have seen the innovation article that PA put out, and I had a little sign above my head. That was actually a blow-up of the napkin. But it morphed, and what we wanted to come up with was an idea, and I've worked with a lot of people on this, and with a huge amount of FSS help. I said, I want us to come up with this idea, spark tanks, and that's kind of our normal language here in the Air Force when we're talking about innovation. I want to connect to that, and then I want to find a way to kind of connect to home, to here, to Spokane, to Fairchild. And so the letters were just INLAND. We are the Inland Northwest here, location-wise. And then that I looked very familiar to me. It looked like our city, our landscape here if you look in downtown Spokane. And I thought instantly it's the clock tower. And so we morphed that. We had the light bulb and then a couple designers. We threw this out. We paid for about 50 different designs, just gave them the vision. And they threw the tanker in there. I originally had like a boom, and it looked like the filament. And somebody threw the tanker in there, and I'm like, you know what? I really like that because I think it stands out a little bit more. And we wanted to say, hey, how do we make this a little bit more Fairchild-y? What we're trying to build here is a Fairchild Innovation Hub. And it starts with an idea and it starts with a vision, but we also wanted to create a space. And again, with a huge amount of FSS, civil engineer, comm support, we have a thinker space that is up, and within 30 days, we'll be fully operational in there. But I went in there yesterday, and the team's gonna get a chance to see it this afternoon. It's about 1,000 square feet, just shy of 1,000 square feet, of just space where we can all go on our own time if you just need to get away. Sometimes you do need to get away from the unit. Sometimes you just need to put on shorts and a t-shirt and hang out and have some place to go. It is not full of all kinds of useless toys that nobody knows how to use yet. But we have given you some technology in there that you might actually find useful, like a Glowforge. We bought the top-of-the-line Glowforge, and what that allows you to do, you can put a piece of cardstock in there and cut out anything. It's very easy to use, too. So if you're trying to design something or make a widget out of cardboard first, you can do that in this room. We've got two 80-inch monitors, a projection. You can set the room up any which way you want because all the furniture's modular. We've got 40 feet of whiteboard. Most of it I can't reach above the 6-foot level, okay? So there will be I'll bring my step stool in and I'll donate it to the thinker space. But we wanted this space as a place to go that you can identify with and use it on your terms. And what Major Watson and folks like Megan, you know, they're offering to come out to that space and spend time with us. We're going to bring other folks from the community to come in and spend time with you, the airmen, and coach you, give you knowledge, pizza, sodas, whatever we need in that room. You know, we just ask that you take care of the room. But you're going to have access to, like I said, great computer systems in there, some AutoCAD systems if you want that, if you want to use that. And folks can come teach you, how do you pitch your idea? Where can I get funding? You need to thank your wing commander who donated $50,000 to make that room a possibility. That's a $50,000 investment in you, and I appreciate that we have leadership that wants to do that for us. So this logo is about 98% complete. We're working just a little bit more with the colors, but we like the way this is, and I think it says this is us here at Team Fairchild within the community of Spokane. We want to make sure we have these strong partnerships with our community, so I just want to share that with you today. All right, we're going to turn it over now, and we're going to leave you with a panel of our speakers. And Sergeant Hearns, I'll turn it back over to you, and speakers, if you would, I'll have you take your seats. General Holt, I have you right in the center there.
Sat down right when we got up here. Quick informal poll. Let's say, hypothetically, that every single last one of you was going off to go start your own thing, build your own business, be an entrepreneur at something. I'm going to put out two values. You would a lot of money, that to go the master of your own domain and your own boss. Now, if you would do that to go make a lot of money, raise your hand. If you would do that to be your own boss, raise your hand. Yeah, that's wisdom. That's wisdom. And the money follows. But that's good to know. And that's a good place for us to start our little journey here. It won't take too much of your time. But one of the things that I think I'll do before we take your questions is reach out to the panel one by one and get everybody's idea about one certain question. So as the Chief Operating Officer of Brady Industries, and it's America's largest greenfield startup, kind of a hold my beer company, what I find as we're building a team in a very rapid fashion to a very, very big company, I'm constantly looking at the team and I'm looking in the mirror myself at gaps. So you know your own strengths and you know your weaknesses. You know, in tech companies, they see this very, very frequently with, I'm an engineer, what do I need the salesperson for? And vice versa. And so as you build out and as you grow an organization and as you're thinking in an entrepreneurial way, how do you address your own gaps? How do you measure the gaps in the team? And as a team, how do you get after that as an issue? Or is it an issue at all? And so I think for my left, I'll run over to Chris and throw that into his lap, and we'll run down the line.
So the question is, as a startup grows, how do we assess the gaps? And so I think is a little bit of what Jordan might have touched on. Through the stages, it quickly evolves, but I always try to be a process thinker and think about, I know what my strengths are, and I know if I need to do those other jobs, I can roll up my sleeves and figure it out. Wiki is wonderful, you know. And when I'm teaching engineering students, I used to take 8 hours in the library figuring out these, just getting the resources out of engineering books, and I can find it in 30 seconds today. Understanding what my weaknesses are, and then understanding what I like to do, and then making sure I'm recruiting people that can fill those gaps, but also early on wear a lot of the hats. And what I find as an engineer, and I like to think of myself, even though I'm an engineer, that marketing and sales is very important, and I like that space and the engineering space. So my biggest gap is I want someone to watch the numbers for me. I like the numbers and I can dig into them, but you can only do so much, and that's why it's so important to say, I can't do it all, and I need people to cover these other areas. So I begin to look for some of those critical things, and one of the first critical things is good financial controls while you might be selling or engineering. So I don't know if that's a kickoff of it.
Mm-hmm. We don't get to choose our teams very often, do we? And we're certainly not running startups. So what I've seen done well is looking at your team, evaluating yourself first, but then certainly looking at your team and saying, all right, am I a right brain, creative, visionary, like to be out front in front of people, or am I more left brain? I like to be the one doing the work. Once I see the vision, I can complete that vision and I can give it my 100%. And then identify that in yourself. For me, I know that I'm more on the right side. I do enjoy doing a little bit of that left brain work, but I'm definitely more on the right side, more of a creative. And then I try to look at the people that are on my team. What kind of people are they? Okay, if they're left brain, then those are the people that like to be in the back. I'm not going to ask them to be up front and to maybe be the person that does a DV visit. I'm going to be the person that says, I need you to go and train the students and do their grade sheets, and they're going to be super happy about that because that's what their strength is. So affording people to work out of their passions and their strengths based on kind of their thought and personality profile is what I've seen done well and what I try to do with my teams.
So when you go to the circus or the fair, it's like you must be this tall to ride the ride. I think that initial bar that gets set is our values, and you fit it or you don't. And when we started, we hired kids out of college. Like that was how this whole thing kicked off, because that's all we could afford. And I remember like 30 days in, our first employee went and bought a car, and I was so damn stressed out. I was like, oh, if we have to let her go now, this is going to be really painful. So she has to work out for us. So like we got lucky there. But I think what happens is you bring on, college kids, and we started bringing on like stay-at-home moms. Stay-at-home moms can manage anything if they can get like 4 different kids to soccer, pack their lunches, and be on time for things. Like they just execute it to a whole nother level. But then we started to have to bring on people that understood the financial controls. We actually didn't really have any financial controls until probably 4 years in. It was just like, is there money in the bank or not? Which is, we try not to tell investors that at this point. But we've raised 62 million. And so, I think it's just constantly challenging yourself. Like you're trying to land on the moon, and you like with each department, and if they can't get to that next level, you have to evaluate, and eventually, sometimes you have to bring in new blood just to continue to push. And I think it really starts at the top and just never being satisfied. It's probably the gap that I have is like, it's not things are never good enough, but it's just keep improving. Like we have a motto that's just do better. Like no matter if you scored 100 points in the basketball game last night, like maybe you could score 105 tomorrow. And it is this like overwhelming sense of just continuing to improve. And so that's kind of how we evaluate. If somebody's not getting it done, we have to find somebody else.
That's great, Caroline.
Great. Well, this is a fascinating question, because spending your time figuring out where your gaps are is really important, because when you're leading a team, success or failure is going to be based on, the gaps of, what gaps you have to be successful. To manage that one, you need a lot of self-awareness. You need to recognize your own and then use your team to augment them. So whether it's, needing somebody strong to have the financial controls, or whether it's needing somebody visionary to keep pushing new ideas to augment, to have those right skills across the team. The other thing that I love to do is I love the cheesy pick your flavor, personality, strengths, type assessments, and ensuring the team all is aware of those. And one of the things I'm not afraid to do, and I don't usually declare it, but I sometimes make sure that if I have somebody that's really visionary, really good with customers, I know to kind of partner a number 2 underneath them that is a wicked great doer. And I'll kind of set up my number 1 level, my first level down, and my second level down with some of those things in mind, so that I'm even thinking about my team's gaps and then how to augment them. And usually, the other way I think about these gap situation is your best people have your biggest gaps. So if you think about some of the most creative geniuses of all time, right? Whether we're talking, Steve Jobs, he was incredibly, that attention to detail and that innovation, but he was a shitty guy. So he wouldn't have been your people guy. So, you'd want him to drive your innovation. You'd better have a dang good HR person or strong chief operating officer to blend that gap. So I often, we're afraid of the gaps, but usually it's because everyone, especially if you're really good, you probably have a gap somewhere. If you're really good with people and really innovative, you have great ideas, you probably aren't strong on financial controls, maybe. So I also think just being wise to it, aware of it, and willing to kind of team things and partner with it and embrace it.
A lot of the startups come in and they are either really good at the vision, direction, and they have this big idea, or they're really good executors. Rarely do we get somebody who has both. And so the first thing we do is a gap analysis. What is it that you lack? How can we augment that? And we find mentors, advisors, people to help them not only develop themselves, but potentially actually fill those roles either on a contract basis or to become a member of their team as we're building those businesses up for them. Because it's really important. You have to have all of that. I think the biggest one that's most terrifying to watch is financial. That's the one I always go after first. How do we make sure that you are not going to go to jail? That'd be a problem. And so that is absolutely one of the first things we do with any startup is analyze where the weaknesses are and how to backfill that and provide the lowest cost effective solution to get you to a place where you can actually operate functionally. And for myself, the gap that I feel like I don't really like doing details very much. I'm really more about driving the vision and keeping people motivated and moving them forward. And so I always make sure that you do the bad stuff you don't like to do first in the morning and knock those off your list, and make sure that you have a team that knows that's your weakness and rely on them. Make sure that you can be candid and have frank conversations. Hey, if you don't see this email from me, put a tickler on your calendar to remind me too. I have one on mine, but in case I miss it, please help me not fail. And then I provide that same support to my team as well. And that makes us all more successful because our customers are giving us that direct feedback and letting us know whether we're missing the mark or not.
So I've had the most time to think about this question. And all I can come up with is beer. Is that okay? No, the only comment I want to make on that is I think we get a little hung up on gaps. I really do. I think that we came out of an education system that tried to raise our floor. If you're really bad at something, well, you just have to work harder. And then if you're really lucky, you can become mediocre at it. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to build a business or to run a business. I think you identify the areas where people are above average, where they're exceptional, and you let them do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm never going to be good at the detail part of it. I'm just never going to be good at it. And I can rack my brain and I can punish myself about it, but I'm never going to be good at it. And so to the extent that you can work around that or surround yourself with people who are really good at it, who can complement you in those areas, I think that's going to be the only way that we don't end up all sort of working down toward the mean, right? And then you end up with an organization that's just medium, right? Nobody wants that. So again, I think you feed your fastest horses, and you find out where people are really good, and you keep them in those areas. And the best opportunity is if you can surround yourself with the people who can, again, I think other people mentioned it, who are really good at what you're really bad at. But don't spend too much time trying to make yourself average at the things you're bad at. That's my advice.
That's great. So I think for at Brady Industries, and it's such an interesting case, and actually Jordan sparked me in a couple of areas when he was talking about his story about scaling. We're going to grow. We're 60 headcount now, and we're heading to 2,000, and we're going to do it within, I think, a couple of years. And so when we look at our gaps, looking in the mirror, I think for me it's what I was promoting earlier, just as a general philosophy. And so I'm looking at myself going, well, how is that financial understanding bicep going? How am I building myself into a leader that's of a much bigger organization? How am I understanding M&A markets and all of those types of things? How am I backing up my CEO? And so rather than flagellating or beating myself up, it's much more about looking at the curve of the growth that we're on and then plotting out, am I going to meet the company where it needs to be in terms of what it needs from me at those junctures? And so just like you're always re-recruiting your superstars, and you all better be doing that in your military units, in my aspect, you're always reapplying for the same job you have. And you've got to be in this constant self-improvement, self-betterment mode and a lifelong learner in order to be where you need to be. So now let's go to your questions. And Sergeant, I think you're going to cue those off, and I'll parse them out if there's not a named individual on the card. And there will be retribution for any question that's a little untoward. I'll take care of that a little bit later.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off with the first one here. This is just a general question to whoever. Do you feel military has a developed skill set at all levels to transition to industry?
Good question. We're hiring a third vet, so I'm biased. Who would like to take that?
I guess I'll take it since you pointed at me. There's a mic down here. So can you read the question again? I was hoping somebody else was going to answer that.
So I apologize. It's hard to read. They didn't rewrite it. It says, do you feel military has the developed skill set at all levels to transition to industry?
Absolutely transition to industry. I think which industry and which level of business, that might be a little bit trickier. We see, in our line of work, we've hired a lot of really high-level executives from some of the major hotel chains, Hilton, Marriott, Choice, and they've just never been in the trenches before. They've never been in a startup company before, and I think that their skill set's much better aligned with some of the larger companies. That's probably true with a lot of the military leaders as well. If you're a one-star general, potentially walk in, and we talked about this yesterday, you walk into Airbnb day 5 and you got some 22-year-old software developer that's like, what's up, dude? You totally screwed up that thing yesterday. How do you react to some of this stuff? And I also think that some people are really good doers and some people are really good at managing large groups of people and what that takes. So I think finding that right level of company that you want to go work with, startups probably don't pay the best. That's not in every case, but I think what we do provide is you get to be in the room for all levels of discussion. You're going to meet with the investors to raise capital. You're going to meet with the largest real estate developers in the country. You may not get that at a larger organization, but there are some sacrifices that you get. You're going to work, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so you better love it.
So one thing that I'll add on to that is in my travels right now, I have a lot of folks that I mentor when they're making that transition out of the military, both enlisted leadership and officer. And one of the things that I will tell them, no matter what industry they're trying to go to, is in your interviews, lead with this. Because a lot of times our resumes don't exactly translate. But lead with this. I have 3 strengths that I know that I'm going to bring to you from my military background and experience. 1 is integrity. Okay? 2 is discipline. And 3 is very powerful, and I see it all the time in our company, and that is an adaptive, rapid learning curve. And you cannot, that's an intangible on a balance sheet that you cannot undervalue. So you have these strengths. And too often times in my own flying career, I would see pilots who are like, man, I'm going to the airlines. And that may be just fine if that's what you want to do. But it's not for everybody, and I know a lot of airline pilots who got to there and they did that for a while, and it wasn't satisfying or sustainable for them. In any MOS or AFSC that you're sitting in, do understand that what you're doing does translate to a civilian career somewhere doing something. You just have to get to that translation in what it is. And if you ever have the misfortune, like I have had many times working with headhunters, you've really got to knuckle down and make them understand what and who you are so that they can translate that into something that you want to springboard to. What's our next one?
This one is for Mr. Jordan Allen. The question state, what is the significance or meaning of Stay Alfred?
Oh, geez. Okay, so my last name is Allen. I had a previous business partner. They say the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership. I don't know if that's entirely true, but his last name was Manfred. Allen and Manfred was basically Alan Manfred created Alfred, which is like the Batman from Butler. He serves people, and our first logo was a butler with the like skyline of Seattle on the tray, but when you shrunk it down, it looked like a turkey, so people thought we were a catering company, so we had to change that. And then, so we started out with Alfred's Away, and it was so hard to say over the phone. Then we became Alfred's Inc., and our CPA called, and he goes, hey, are you guys incorporated? I'm like, I don't know, I got a business license. He's like, you know, the Army doesn't teach you about all the different corporate structures. He goes, listen, you dumbass, you're going to get sued. Like, you're just an LLC, you're not incorporated, so you can't have the Inc. at the end. I'm like, okay, so we changed it to Alfred's Vacation Rentals, and then we went through this like rebranding process. It sounds like maybe what you guys did for the logo up here. Went on like logodesigncontest.com for $99. Had like people from, you know, Croatia, Bosnia, the Philippines, kind of all over the world, Bangladesh, designing logos for us, and we got to pick one. And then we did like a Zipinion.com where we put like $500 on, and people got to vote on the names and taglines. So you can go spend like $20,000 going to a marketing company to get a logo designed and a name, or you can spend like $500 and have it tested throughout the entire country on what people like. We had check into home, and like the majority of feedback, like you get to set your kind of target market. So it was a lot of like, you know, moms and families and stuff booking travel, and people are like, I hate my home. I don't want to check into my home. So I thought it was great. 80% of people hated it, so we decided to not go with it.
That's great. That's great. Next question.
So the next question is for Major Mark Watson. This one's going to be tough to read. So as 5-year-olds equals airmen/lieutenants, in terms of how they are just starting to be institutionalized by our Air Force education system. How did you get them and others to start providing ideas on how to improve their jobs/processes?
Yeah, good question. I've heard everything from colonels that say, I don't care what ideas that my A1Cs have or my lieutenants have. All I want them to do is do the job. We need to be able to go out and get support from all of our airmen, ideas from all of our airmen. What our young entries into the Air Force have is a fresh perspective. Guys like me and older than me have been doing this for a while, and we kind of know how the puzzle fits together, how the machine works, and a lot of times our creativity is bound by the restraints of the system. So what those fresh minds that just came out of either academia or they came out of high school, where again they were in academia, have is a really fresh perspective. And so what I would do in the 54th Air Fueling Squadron is my commander had stood up this process improvement office that I ran, and I had a whiteboard that I told everyone in the squadron about. I emailed everyone about it and said, you can come and write up how to improve this unit with any of your ideas. You don't have to put your name to it. Just come and tell us what sucks, and then my office will try and go figure out what the root cause of why that sucks is, and we'll try to address it. And what they did was provide anonymity to the folks that had the great ideas, gave them a little bit of courage to be heard, and also address those concerns that are going to make the organization better in the first place. So I would encourage something similar to get those ideas, and also for us old folks, I would encourage you to listen to those new ideas and not just say, that's not how it's done. That doesn't mean it's not how it could be done.
One thing, when I was a lieutenant colonel, and I was in Stuttgart, I was on the northern invasion of Iraq planning staff. And as you know, we did not have a northern invasion of Iraq. We came up through the south because the Turkish parliament kind of fell apart at the last second as we were getting everything ready. But to get ready, that means you had to have the 4th Infantry Division floating out in the water and everybody ready to go in. So what happens is we have this tremendous shift. The Turkish are departing the war plan immediately, and now we've got an entire infantry division that's got to get out. And the lead elements, including General Batiste, have got to get out on a C-17 that the Turkish have now pulled all the diplomatic clearances from, and we can't get them to Kuwait. And by the way, they need to be there in 6 hours to mesh up with the timing of the main invasion force. So it's an interesting problem. Everybody starts throwing monkey poop on everybody. Okay, that's what starts happening here. So you can imagine. For those of you in command and control, you know what I'm talking about. So the Tanker Airlift Control Center calls up, and now we've got everybody's first name is General. General this, General that, General that, and they're all screaming and yelling, and let's go yell this C-17 off the ramp, yelling at the Turks, the State Department, all of that. My 3-star came downstairs, and I was the only airlifter on the staff, and he said, well, what do we do about this? And I said, to me, I think that we should probably talk to the aircraft commander of the airplane, because that's usually where the answer is. And he said, can you get in touch with this aircraft commander? And I said, yeah, I think they're up in Diabakar. Let me give him a call. And I called up. It happened to be somebody I knew from Charleston. And I said, hey, what's going on? And he was screaming at me. He said, they won't listen to me. Command and control, I have the answer right here. This is how we're going to do this. This is all fine. And I'm just waiting for some knucklehead from our government to let me take off with this very irate 4-star general. And I said, cool. Approved? Go? And the jet got there in 6 hours because our airmen knew. Go ahead.
So here's another shotgun blast for everybody. Regarding igniting innovation into action, what advice do you have for inspiring innovative, or more precisely, going from a great idea to getting off your butt and doing it?
Who wants to jump first?
I will. Just start. Start investing time in yourself. Come ask questions. Come to someplace like Startup Spokane, or go down to the SBDC. Ask questions. If you have an idea or a product, just bring it to somebody who can help you figure out how to bring it to market. If you come to me, I might put you up with somebody like Chris who can help you if it's a product, or if it's a software product. I have people who we work with on those kinds of things. The only thing that's in your way right now is you. So if you have an idea that you think has value, bring it to light and let's vet it, because otherwise it's just an idea, and you can own 100% of zero forever, or you might bring it to market, some great idea, and get some investment and own a part of something that becomes really big and changes the world. And I'd love to help you do that.
Yeah, and I think from the base perspective, there's a lot of people on the base that want to help you develop that idea that you have. Every base has what's called continuous process improvement, and that's a education program, and they have green belts and black belts that are trained problem solvers that can help you define the problem, which oftentimes is what's most overlooked, and then help you get a plan together to then take to your supervisor, your commander, and say, here's the problem, here's what the data shows the problem is, here's the root cause, and here's my plan to fix it, permission to pursue. And if you get something like that together and say, I see a gap in our performance, and here's my plan, I think everyone's going to be happy and say, press. So your FSS Manpower Office has the name of all of the black belts and green belts that are on base. I'm one of the black belts that's on base, and I would love to sit down with any and every one of you to work on a problem, because we all have them, they all stink, and we all want solutions to them. So I would offer my time. I'll be at that Inland Spark Thinker Space once a month. And other than that, you have my information in the bulletin that you were handed this morning. And you can find me in Global, mark.watson.16. And I'm happy to help. Your commanders are happy to help. FSS is happy to help.
Maybe I completely agree. These are great points. The other thing that usually happens is your idea, your innovation is somehow related to a change, and you might get pushback. And I see all the time, good ideas are stifled because of the status quo. One of our speakers talked about that, or it's different, or it's change. So absolutely, this is where grit and a little bit of hearing no is going to be part of the process. So we can get to people like this that are actually incented to sponsor your ideas. That's a really good idea, because the people around you might not be as supportive, but don't let that get you down.
So being in the military, I know it's kind of scary to come up with an idea and knowing it's going to get shot down, or you just decide not to come up with it or pursue it knowing that. But, I think like these kinds of things, like, look, there's like these, military, business partnerships, and there's a lot of technology that's out there. And I think, looking back at, my career, and, I was like an information officer for a little while, and it's like, man, if I would have had like Tableau to plot, where IEDs were going off, like days of the week, times of the day, size of a blast, all that, like we probably would have been 10 times more successful. And I knew about stuff like this. It was just like, yeah, but it's probably not secured. I don't want to go to jail. I don't even know what to do. And so, but if I would have said, hey, can we at least get somebody from, like, I guarantee Tableau would jump at the opportunity to come give a presentation to somebody. They'll figure it the hell out, how to get the information secured or work with, DOD. But there's just so many things like that. And I think people are curious. They're hungry for knowledge. So, bringing some of these business to military partnerships in, I know your commanders would love that as well. Like, they get to learn about what's going on outside of the military. So that'd be my suggestion.
Chris, did you want to take on?
I think for the internal look, like on the base, it goes back to maybe step back and say, how do I get the rest of the team on board, right? And it goes back to when I'd make a CEO do a process walk, and he had to make his chart, and at the end he had the pile of spaghetti. He was buying in, and the buy-in. So you might have an idea, you want to go put change. It's really, now you need to start telling the story and bringing people along on that journey and getting their buy-in too. And that's the biggest thing. There's tons of people with a better mousetrap.
The final word goes to you, sir.
The last comment I was going to make on that, and people have talked about it, the idea of how do you, I think the question was how do you sort of, get off the couch, I think, and make that happen. There's nothing worse than having somebody else launch your idea because you sat on it, or you were afraid of it, or you didn't know what to do, and you didn't know how to reach out, and suddenly you wake up one day and that great idea is out there because somebody else beat you to it, because somebody else got off their couch that day, and you didn't.
Last bit of wisdom, and then we'll finish up here. All pain is not gain. So when you want to launch the big idea, you need to really understand the environment that is surrounding your current big idea. Lieutenant Colonel Blaine Holt and Captain Scott Heathman had worked very, very vigorously on a new way of employing the C-17 in combat to drop ops tempo for all of the crews and recapitalize our readiness and training. And we had it down to a science. I mean, numbers, modeling, all of that good stuff. The only thing is we knew the 3-star out there was going to kill us all like baby seals. So we had a mentor in the TACC, and we got them to kind of keep our plan and powder dry. And then a very special day came. It was a retirement of a 3-star. And then it was time to launch our big plan. And before you knew it, we were in a decision brief with the commander of Air Mobility Command. We got a table slap, and for 10 straight years, that's the way that the C-17 operated. And he and I still get emails to this day saying thank you for that. So on that note, first off, I want to thank all of our panelists because it has absolutely been a joy to get to meet and talk with all of you. And I'm certainly looking forward to working with some of you on follow-on projects. And I really want to thank my alma mater, Team Fairchild and Scott Heathman, for pulling this all together, coming here and talking about how to think clearly, critically. You know what, our government needs this, our country needs this, and they expect our best, and they deserve no less. And thank you. So give yourselves a round of applause.
Well, thank you, General Holt, for moderating, and thank you, Team Fairchild, for all of your thoughtful questions. At this time, we would now like to welcome some of the LIFT team members back to the stage for a special presentation. Oh, by the way, the keys to the Ford, somebody has them, so we're good. Yeah.
All right, so on behalf of the entire LIFT team, so there's surely no less than 30 individuals that have helped put this event together. And a special shout out to Ms. Dawn Altmeyer. She's not here with us today. And Colonel Heathman were heavyweights in talking to you guys and recruiting you guys and and helping kind of guide this team, put it together. So our third annual, I feel like it's getting better and better every year. Hopefully we lay the foundation for next year, but certainly we are eternally grateful for your time and certainly your wisdom and the assortment of talents that you guys bring. I think it will be invaluable to our airmen and the knowledge that you guys have shared today that they can take forward. So we've had a group that have actually worked individually on these small gifts. So Sergeant Hatchell, she's out there somewhere, but it's essentially a wood placard that's got kind of the lift emblem, and it's the design is to be a kind of photo album. So we've got some stock photos in there, and we're going to get you guys all prints of the photos from today and this afternoon, and you can put those in there later, but a certainly small token of appreciation for your guys' time today. So thank you very much.
Does he have a... Colonel Heath was going to close us out with some final comments.
All right, I got the yellow mic here, just in case. All right, a lot of information today. If we kind of hit the mark for you, can I get an amen? Amen. All right. Makes me feel good. Like I said, as I kind of walk the hallways here a little bit and talk with airmen, I don't expect you to walk with something from everybody, walk away with something from everybody. I hope you take one thing away, and I think that's success. Just some final thoughts here. I had about 8.5 seconds to write this down, but some things I learned from all of our hashtag Magnificent 7 folks. Here's what I learned today. Fire everybody in the Department of No, and then look around in your spaces to see who might be lingering and get rid of them too. Get them out of the way. Sincerity, absolutely. We could all practice that a little bit more. And then sign a contract with Kevin Sanders to bring him back to Fairchild. Check. We've already done that. Your wing commander signed a contract to bring him back to teach not only commanders on base about looking at trust and sincerity and competence in that dialogue, but also you, the airmen. You're going to have an opportunity to tell your teammates or yourself to come right back here in this auditorium on May 16th to learn more from Kevin and a little bit more in depth and a little bit different material. So, but we're going to get after that again. Let's see here. Chris Wood, I need to Google nanocrystalline structures. That sounds important. So he is one of the smartest guys I've ever met, and it is hard to keep up. But if you have Google readily available, you can get after that. But I always appreciate the way his mind works. The 6 H's. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that last H. I think Haloyal is way better than loyal, and I love that. I am going to steal that and use that. That was fantastic. Let's see, where else are we going here? For Sherilyn, the leadership, when you started speaking, we just briefly met backstage, right? It's the first time we've ever physically met in person. And the question she said, she's like, I really hope my message connects. The whole time as I'm listening to her talk about her company, I'm totally seeing this play out in our military, the way that we need to set up our leadership environments, supervisory environments, how we can kind of sometimes transition jobs, and that could equate to deployments, and you've been asked to do something that's not your primary job. It completely translated for me, and regardless of rank or position, you have a voice, and you need to step out, and you need to get after it. Let's see, what else here? There are innovators among us. Come out into the light. Thank you, Major Watson. I think that's the message. Come out into the light. And Mark, like he said, he's going to donate a lot of time to Team Fairchild, and I fully expect you to use all the resources he's got available. And then lastly here, Megan, Ikigai, right? Am I saying that right? Ikigai. Okay, yeah. I'm going to try to remember that one. That's a really good one there. Find it, and then don't buy a PlayStation right away. Don't buy PlayStation 5. Just hold out, take your time, hunker down, do the hard work. It's something Gary Vaynerchuk, and if any of you are familiar with him, he said the same thing in a piece of content that I listened to the other night, and it was somebody had asked him about, why do you not want to get money fast and be rich? And he's like, he loves the process. This takes time. He reinvests back in the company. Hopefully today we've done that for you. The main goal for today was to reinvest back into you, our company, our business, our service. And I hope you go out, I hope you brag about what you saw, and in a week or so, we're going to have all this up online. You'll be able to share that and show others. So thank you again to the entire LIFT team, to Major Burke Wilson and Sergeant Tim Reiner. They are your leads for this, and they did a remarkable job. So thank you all. Thank you all you innovators, and this is Team Fairchild signing off, and have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, take care.